Hello and welcome to Rich, Simple, Human. On today's show, I am beyond delighted to be sitting down with Dave Jones because Dave and I have known each other for absolutely ages in a whole myriad of ways that we won't be sharing with you today. But what I can tell you is Dave Jones is a Heart Styles associate. He is a Lego serious play facilitator and founder of Uplift Consulting, amongst quite a lot of other things that we might find out about if you stay tuned. Dave, I'm going to start by asking you about Lego serious play because you're not the first person I've spoken to about this tool. And I also see that it has almost mystical qualities in the way it brings out people's innermost desires. So with that massive intro, can you just start by telling us a little bit about why we might use Lego Serious Play with leaders, founders and CEOs?
It's a great question, Lindsey. I think there are lots of reasons. I think the reason that I love it is because it's a route to help smart people to stumble across fresh insights. And it does that because it uses all of our brains when we think, and it is really good at simplifying and cutting through complexity, be that the complexity of a concept, the complexity of a relational dynamic, a team dynamic, an organizational system or situation or ecosystem, a strategy, a change process. It can cut through that complexity and make and simplify it intentionally for people to then kind of take a step back and understand and see. And I can build on I can unpack what I've said, but I guess those are some of the headlines.
I absolutely love that description, helping clever people, because you work with extremely clever people. You've got an awesome catalogue of clients. Dave, for those people who don't know what we're even talking about, and they're now thinking, what are these two talking about using Lego at work? That sounds like a nonsense. Can you tell us a bit more about what Lego Series Play is and actually where it came from?
Yeah, so I wish I was clever enough to have invented it, but it was co-created by a Swiss business school called IMD. And I think the leading professor was Professor Johann Roos. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that right. I think I have. And 25 years ago, I'm not entirely sure on the timeline, IMD and Lego co-created this methodology called Lego Serious Play. I think that Lego were looking for help with their strategy and they wanted to add more kind of democracy into their decision making, how they just operated as a group. There was the rise of tech around that time. So you've got PlayStation, Xbox, and I think Lego were trying to figure out their strategy. And they happened just to have friends or relationships with IMD. And they said, well, we've got some ideas around operating in flow state and how to think democratically, think creatively, simplify complexity, and maybe some of the strategy, some of the team development, team decision-making processes we could do with Lego. And to cut a long story short, they went through a process of rigorously testing and developing some programs for strategy, for team management and team development, not management, team development, that they ran in-house as a Lego. As Lego. So they ran it for 10 years or so, used the methodology within Lego, and I think may have sold it as like a consultancy to other businesses. And then 10, 15 years ago, I'm not entirely sure on the timelines, they made it open source. So you can look up Lego Serious Play as a methodology online, or you can train in the methodology and kind of get rubber stamped by the founders and by Lego, which I've done to run programs with organizations that might want to map out change processes or strategy or go on a team development journey.
Sounds
but that is the way that I guess that's some of the background, and I could talk more about, I don't know, get into the detail if you want.
I think people will want to know what would happen. I brought Lego Serious Play into my organization because the kind of clients I speak to are not only corporates and founders and CEOs, but also that family office legacy type work where the communication and complexity is high. Mm-hmm. And of course, you can bring in facilitators and you can bring in team building exercises, and you can keep going at this for years and years and years. But until you access that part of the brain that we know becomes active in flow state, you're still missing most of the picture. So I think the question to ask you really is in a session, Dave, what happens, and what would happen if I brought Lego Serious Play into my workplace or culture?
So you start with something called skills building, which is getting people used to the fact that you're building using metaphor and you're building using symbol and storytelling. So if I said to you, build a polar bear, there are 3 ways you can do that. You can do it like you do in Legoland, which is 30,000 bricks, or I don't know, however many it is to build a polar bear. Or you can get a Duplo polar bear and stick it on the plate. Or you can get a white brick and stick it on the plate and say, that's a polar bear. And we're using version 3. So it's all about the meaning that you put to the model, to the bricks. So it doesn't matter how it looks at all. You could put a white brick on the plate and say that is hope, or that's our finance department, or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter how it looks. It's if you've given it a meaning, that's the meaning. So you start with some activities, and again, depending on how long you've got for a program, depends on how much skills building you do. But I'd set some questions, silly questions like build a dog with 6 bricks. Now describe to your partner why it's the world's best dog. Invent a story, and just get people used to using metaphor, to using symbols, to using story. It's not about literalism. It's all about the meaning. And that's easier for some than others. So that's why you want to give people a warm up. And then you get into the real work. You set a question, and it would be, let's say you go, where is the organization right now? Let's do a SWOT analysis. What's our strengths? What's our weaknesses? Development opportunities. And you might say to people, spend 20 minutes building your answer to that question. Where are we at right now as a business? So everyone starts building. You've got some music on, and it's kind of it's a great vibe. And straight away, lots of the cynics are beginning to engage, because lots of people are like, what am I doing? I'm a serious person. I've got serious work. Why are we playing around? And they're starting to realize, okay, I'm actually thinking with my hands now, and I'm actually taking this seriously, and I'm thinking really deeply. And what's happening is, as you're thinking with your hands, the limbic system kicks in. And when we talk, we often skip over nuance. But what happens is, when you're building and you've got time to think, you're building in thoughts, feelings, nuance into your model, which you otherwise might skip over. So you build whatever the answer is to your question. Let's say it's where is the business at right now? And then you stop, and then you take time to go around the circle, and you hear from everyone, and everyone shares their model. Everyone asks curious questions. And straight away, people are having a really deep conversation, and they're having a really robust conversation. And then you might take a step back and say, okay, as a group, what insights have we stumbled across? What excites us? What concerns us? What's changed? And you just facilitate a conversation, and you might film that or jot down whatever the learnings are from that. Then you make a shared model using all the different models, and there's different ways to do that. But then you get to a point where you've actually got a democratic picture of everyone's answers to that question. Where is the business at right now? And then you can tweak it and go, all right, is there anything missing from this? Are we happy with this? Does this represent all our thoughts and feelings about where the business is at right now? So that might be part 1. And then you can repeat the phases, go, right, how do we think the business is perceived externally? Repeat the process. What's our aspiration? What's the vision? Who are we when we're at our very best? What does that look like and feel like and sound like? And then what you have is you have a landscape. So you have current reality, external reality, aspirational reality, and then you can build the ecosystem around that. What are the things that will help us to get from here to over there? What are the things which will hinder that? And there's a whole process that you can go on. So it's that kind of experience that you can create for a client. And even though it's called Lego Serious Play, it should almost be called like Lego Serious Thinking, because it really is about taking it seriously, thinking really, really deeply. But actually, as we use our hands, we do stumble across fresh insights, often things that we didn't even realize we were feeling. We suddenly just kind of come out of us.
I just love it.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
I'm so excited, Dave, and I think all our listeners will be like, right, where do I sign? I want this in my business. I want it in my family. Actually, I want it in a team I've ever been in. The reason I do my work and the reason I use tools like sophrology is because as soon as we engage the body as well, we're firing on all cylinders. It's not an app, it's not a piece of software. It's a physical process where there are bricks involved, and we're using all of our resources to be able to come up with these ideas. So we're not just stuck in our clever brain, but we're in the body as well. And like
Hmm.
you say, the limbic system, and we're functioning in a very different way.
Mm.
I'm mystified as to how we've managed to get to this point in life where these tools aren't sort of the go-to. This is almost a revival,
Mm.
a coming back to. What do you see in the landscape? Because you've been around as long as I have in these sorts of businesses. What do you think's happened with people where they're just using their brains and thinking about problems?
What's the question?
Well, how have we ended up with this even being, I'm not controversial, but there are a lot of CEOs who'll be, I'm sure you come across them, oh, we're not doing that, or why would we engage in this nonsense? And it's not, it's a very valuable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose what's in my mind is that number one, it does take time.
Yes.
So you have to choose the issues that you want to give time to explore. So
Oh,
that is a barrier. So you have to think carefully. Like, you could have, I'm in a team, a lovely team of three, and, we'd only probably use Lego Serious Play on a team day, to really work through a whole bunch of issues. We don't use it in our kind of day-to-day conversations, probably just because it does take time. And I think it's probably really comes into its own when you need to think carefully and you need to think really, really deeply, I think. So maybe that's a blocker. And then another thing is it's one of those things where you don't really know the value until you've tried it. And sometimes you think, oh yeah, that's a cool thing. I'm sure that's great for you guys. And then you give it a go and you think, oh wow, yeah, this could be really good. And I could see us doing that with our team. And I could see it being valuable with these particular things that we need to work through. I think part of it is just exposure or lack of.
I also had the privilege of talking to another Lego Serious Play facilitator who uses the method in prisons. Now, this is
Okay.
not so applicable to our the work I do and the work that you do, but he's in the middle of making a documentary about it, and I will actually tag the website because it's fascinating. But the results they're seeing in prisons, where you've got inmates being able to describe the undescribable, talk
Mm.
about the unmentionable,
Hmm.
unlock the unforgivable, if that's even a word, having
Hmm.
seen some forgiveness stuff, we know that we've seen people forgive all sorts of things. This is a very, very powerful method.
It is, and you can use it, and it's helpful that you said that because you can use it on kind of the macro level, like I've described. Build how's our business going on, going across the world maybe, but you can also use it on a micro level, just for people to get to know one another at a deeper level. So you could set a question and say, just build, who am I in this team? What are my superpowers? How to get the best of me? How to get the worst of me? Sub question, who am I at a deeper level?
Yeah.
Sub question, who do I want to be in this team? Everyone answers that question. They spend 15 or so minutes building that as an answer, as building their answer to that question. Everyone goes around the circle, and suddenly it's like, whoa, we've just had a really good share. I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that about you. And you've connected at a deeper level. So you can use it to go in and to go deep, and you can also use it, at that kind of helicopter view level. And so it all depends on what you want to get out of the session. So the way that we work is that you really want to try and understand the client brief. What do you want to get from the session? And then what's behind that? And sometimes you're really trying to ask why, and really trying to really understand the nub of it. And then you go away, we'll go away and we'll design a set of questions that the group could work through, present it back to a client and go, does this look like the workshop that will hit the nail on the head? And they'll be like, yes, I like this bit, but I think we could rephrase that a little bit. You tweak it until you've got, yes, those are the right questions that we want to give people time to really explore and co-create together.
It's a brilliant experience. The reason I was so keen that we talked about this, and I wonder if, to go back to my earlier question about what's happened, I wonder if we've had a sort of 20-year break, because I was just thinking then about sessions that I was running back in 2004, actually. And I was part of a really big change management program working with local authorities.
Mm-hmm.
And I was running workshops where we were using art, we were using pen and paper, we were using plasticine, we were using quite a lot of hands-on material for visioning the future. And this was specifically around a local authority, bringing key partners, police, fire, etc. And I was much, much younger at the time. So here I am turning up, facilitating these sessions, with the chief of police and all these other people. It was very, very amusing. But they did an amazing job, because once they left their egos at the door and they were cutting up magazines and making posters. They were straight into the meat of the issue. Of course, I think in the last 20 years, what's happened is we've put the pen and paper and the post-it notes and the flip charts. And I mean, my office is covered in, because that's the way I was taught to work as a facilitator from graduation. We've been told to sort of put that away, and here's the whiteboard or here's a PowerPoint. And of course, we didn't have that 20 years ago. So I'm praying for a massive revival of Lego.
Of experiential work.
Well, look at the money that's going on retreats, Dave. Look at what's happening in the marketplace with people taking themselves away from the office, going on some of these sort of outward bound type exercises. People are beginning to find this is the only way to do any work because they need to get away from their computer, their office, their phone, etc. I know that you also do outdoor work as well. Can you tell me a bit about, I don't want to come away from Lego because I want to
It's a nice segue. It's a nice segue in.
There is a segue there. Can you tell me a bit about what you do outdoors and how that plays into this flow state creative acceleration?
Yeah, I mean, so it probably comes back into the similar space of experiential learning. So I think with learning, you've got almost a kind of a spectrum of engagement. You've got, on one side, you've got, e-learning, where it's kind of you're clicking through the content and answering questions, through to highly experiential learning, which obviously requires more investment of time and resource, but potentially is more impacting and memorable. And I think the thing with experiential learning, which is what takes place when we run outdoor team days, is you get to put people in a simulator in a way. If you think about a simulator, you're a pilot maybe learning how to fly an aeroplane, and you get to kind of hear the sounds of oh no, and you kind of you practice, don't you? And that's the point of a simulator. So I use a lot a tool and a methodology. It's a philosophy as well called Heart Styles, which I know that we both now have in common. And with that, there's this set of 16 behaviors, 8 effective behaviors, 8 ineffective behaviors. And when outdoors, you can set a team challenge and say, right, what you now need to do is, as a team, accomplish this problem, accomplish this task. But before you give everyone the task, you'll say to each different team members, what I'd like you to do is to act out one of these below the line behaviors. And you do that to everyone and give half the people like the above the line behaviors. So as the activity plays out, not only have you got loads of learnings around teamwork, people are experiencing these behaviors, and they're experiencing someone being super sarcastic or easily offended, and they're like, hey, can you do this? And they say, oh, don't you tell me what to do. And then you experience someone else in the group really encouraging someone be like, great work, and someone else taking the initiative and saying, guys, this is what we should do. And then that provides a kind of, I suppose, a rich learning experience it takes, instead of seeing a PowerPoint with here's 8 effective behaviors above the line, these ones work, and 8 below the line behaviors which don't work, they sap energy. They experience it. This is how it felt when you were upset because I said this little thing, and this is how it felt when you were encouraging me. And you can then debrief as a group. These behaviors built our culture. These behaviors took us towards the goal. These didn't. And yeah, it's a rich, memorable learning experience when you can put people in like a little fun simulator.
It's awesome because you wouldn't let a pilot fly a plane without going in the simulator. And I often say to my clients, you can't learn to swim unless you get in the water. So you've got to get into these emotions. You can't. Clients that I work with, we get to the hard stuff. It's normally like week 3 or 4. And then they start leaning out, going, it's really hard. I don't want to do this anymore. And I always work in a block of sessions so they can't escape. No, we're going through, and you can see them leaning out. I don't want to. You've got to get in there to experience it. And the way you've just described that is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And again, no, go on. No, I was just going to say again, it's always designed bespoke to the needs of the team. So you speak to the client and say, what do you want to get from this outdoor experience? Do you want to have an honest conversation with where this team is at? I run an activity which was passed down to me by a friend called Log to Log, and you just put 5 logs, or if you don't have 5 logs, 5 rucksacks out, or, on the forest floor, and you say, right, where are we at right now? Stand on the log or stand on the rucksack. This one's 5. This one's 1. 5 is great. 1 is poor. Where are we at right now with the quality of our relationships? or the quality of our communication, or whatever it might be that you want to explore. And then everyone stands where they want to stand on the log that they want to stand on. And then you debrief the conversation, say, hey, Bob, why are you over there? Nasheed, why are you standing over there? And again, it's around you physically. It's a picture. It's a powerful picture for people when they see one another standing. Go, okay, right. So that's helpful to see. And that's a helpful conversation to have. So the activities are crafted depending on whatever the objectives are.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Physically moving people, using their bodies in space. Who knew that was going to work? Who knew that this wasn't going to work so well when we just sat behind a screen and tried to do this? And you know as well as I do, when we have a face-to-face conversation, energetically things are so different. This is fine because, we're currently sat in two separate countries, but it's not the same. And I think when you do this work, highly experiential learning has far more impact and higher returns. So why wouldn't you invest in this way? Yeah. So let's pray for a revival of these techniques, because they make people happy as well. They connect.
Yeah.
They get out.
And it's really good because you can then you not only debrief which of these behaviors take us towards the goal, which don't. So it's not only a way of learning, but then you can also link that into, okay, well, when do we actually notice some of these in the office? And when I'm in high stress, where do I go to? And it's, you're always trying to link it back to, to the work, the real work that people are doing. And I think when it's experiential, my experience and what I've heard from others is that it's just really memorable. You're in this situation. It's like you're struggling to get through, and then it just drops into your head like, yeah, I remember this thing that this person said on this event, or when I was out in the hills, and that thing comes to you from the experiential moment, which is just memorable.
It's the same as meditation, though. When we do our prayer meditation properly, and I'm not, I know most people struggle with this. I too struggle. When we're in that alpha brainwave state, that's where everything lives. That's where all the synapses connect and where everything is happening. It's not happening when I'm in super stress trying to think hard. What's the solution? And if you can go on a meditative walk, or you're outside, or you're perhaps, I spend a lot of time messing around in the lake and the river, and that's where my best ideas come, when I'm in that space.
Yeah, I totally agree. This morning I went for a run, and the last few days I've just been on so many calls. When I'm not on calls, I'm with my young children, and I just woke up this morning. I thought my well-being is at a low, and I had time to go for a run and a walk in the woods, and I just felt like home. And it's good for us. It's good for us to be outside and to pray and to meditate and just to calm down.
Absolutely. And take some time, because we're not that busy. Well, we are busy. The other thing that I found I'm finding very strange, Dave, is people who are extremely successful being really busy, and asking them the question, well, if you're that successful, could you choose to be less busy? And they get really offended by that. We're making a choice to be busy here. I make myself busy because it makes me feel worthy. I don't need to do it. And I think when we feel into the reality of that, I just wanted to come back to something you said, because it reminded me of a conversation I had recently about the Hoffman process. Anybody who's listening who's been on Hoffman, A, they're very brave because it's very intense, and B, well done for facing some of your trauma, because that's really what it's there for. But the Hoffman process, where they have these, these different scenarios played out, and you're looking to see how you respond to different behaviors, sounds very similar. And I'm so encouraged to see that happening in other places. Can you just explain for people that don't know, when you talked about above the line behaviors and below the line, we're not talking about conscious and subconscious, are we? Can you just explain a bit more about that? Because I'm not sure I know the difference.
So I'm now using the work of Stephen and Mara Klemick, who founded a tool, psychometric instrument, which measures behaviors, or more specifically measures perceptions of behaviors. And they broke the 16 behaviors which are measured into effective behaviors. And they're either effective because they grow self, either we grow in confidence, or we learn, or they grow others. Others grow in the process when we use them. So that's what makes them effective. And there are also 8 ineffective behaviors, which are essentially defensive behaviors. Either if we feel like we've got something to prove, we're compensating for some kind of lack of within our psyche. So it becomes about, I'm pushing myself forward at the expense of thinking about others, or I'm in some form of kind of social fear, and I'm defending myself. And in both of those states, when we're either self-promoting or self-protecting, we don't grow and others don't grow. So it's you've got 8 effective behaviors, which we use the kind of terminology above the line, and 8 defensive and ineffective behaviors, which are below the line, which are completely normal. It's just part of the difficulty of being a human being, but they just don't really work. So that's where the language, which I think can be really helpful for individuals and teams and organizations to use, above the line or below the line. And we can go there, all the time. Even on this call, Lindsey, I could be in a state of above the line, and I'm doing my best just to relax and be me. And if anyone's listening, hopefully they're being developed in the process. And you could ask me a question. Suddenly I go, whoa, I go into fear mode. Like, what if I don't have the answer? And then I get stressed because I need to come across like some super expert, and it all becomes about me and my self-image. And so we can move around above the line, below the line all the time. So it's just quite helpful just for awareness.
I think one of the biggest challenges I see people struggling with is being able to describe their emotional states. And
Mm-hmm.
this is getting worse the more AI people are using, because they don't have the granularity of the emotional experience. And then they're also losing the granularity of language because they're AIing it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say to somebody, and this was a recent conversation, can you feel the difference between curiosity and wonder? What are you talking about? Now, I'd had the heads up on this because I've been practicing this for an awfully long time. And being in a state of curiosity, this open, expansive, wow, wondrousness is very different from being in this curious, I need to find the answer, I'm curious, which is a very contractive experience emotionally. So I think when you talk about heart styles, and having had some experience of it myself, it absolutely gives you a framework to be able to explore some of that in a shared language, which is becoming with AI even more important, because we're not in our bodies. We're not feeling that, oh, is that fear? Or what's that funny feeling? You and I think, dial into it, but a lot of people just say, I don't feel anything. And they're like, well, I just take drugs at the weekend because I get high and then I feel something. Like, no, we don't want to be doing that. We want to do this naturally, the fear, the excitement. But it's like you say, in the course of you and I talking for an hour, we've gone above the line, below the line. That's normal. That's how it should be. It's exciting. Growth behaviors, so important in business, so important in the self-awareness work, but also these defense behaviors that are below the line that you're describing. These are rooted in evolutionary development. So the fear that keeps us safe, that keeps us in the tribe, that protects us from wolves, that's, it is a useful mechanism, but it's not useful, I don't think, in business or growth. Would you say?
I think so. I would say, I think our brains are doing their very best job to keep us safe, and it's safe to be in the pack, safe to be in the tribe, as you so excellently put. But when we use some of the fear-based behaviors in business, like we avoid because we're scared of getting told off, or we're scared of confrontation, or we're scared of stepping up and taking responsibility. Avoiding it comes from fear. Avoid doing the difficult task doesn't get us anywhere. If we become overly dependent on others for direction, that comes from fear. On one level, our brain's trying to keep us safe. I don't want to make a mistake. I want to be a good team player, but I also am a bit nervous that someone's going to tell me off. Yes, sir. No, sir. 3 bags full, sir. Or mom. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Lack of assertiveness and proactivity, that dependent behavior, so passive, doesn't really drive teams forward, doesn't drive things forward within a business. Equally easily offended, often comes from just low self-confidence. But when someone says something, holding a grudge, becoming bitter easily, and then approval seeking, not necessarily seeking approval within a system. I need approval for someone to get a pay rise. It's not that kind of approval that the instrument measures. It's more, I need you to validate me. So in a social situation, it might be, overly complimenting someone. Oh, I love what you've done with the curtains. I love what you've done with your hair. And it's like, you're on one level, you're trying to connect, but on another level, you're just really trying to get them to like you. And it's kind of a counterfeit of authentic relating. So those are some of the fear-based behaviors which come from such a good heart intention. They come from a real desire to be liked, to be appreciated, to be part of the tribe. But when you add in that element of social fear and the desire to self-protect, the behavior doesn't really work. In our programs, we talk about the 3 I's: intention versus impression versus impact. So every behavior, all of the 16 behaviors, and all behaviors actually, well, this is the guiding philosophy anyway, has it at its heart, a really positive heart intention. Like the heart intention behind the behavior is so good. But then when you add in either pride or fear, it gives a different impression. And then it also has a different impact, differs from the original intention. And the way that Steve Clem put it years ago, which I think is genius, is sarcastic. So take the behavior sarcasm. It's like the heart intention is starcasm. I want you to think I'm smart. I want you to think I'm funny. I want to connect. I want to be a star, right? But then because it's got that element of like pride involved in the behavior, then what it creates is the behavior sarcasm. And the impact of that we call scarcasm. Because actually what happens is you get people's feelings being hurt. You get people being devalued, either self or others or their contribution or whatever it might be. Something is devalued. Emotional disconnection happens. People back away. It creates a lack of safety within a context. Often when there's lots of sarcasm, it only really creates permission for other people to be sarcastic as well. So there you have it. You've got intention, heart intention, which is so good. It's a good heart intention, but the impact, huge difference between intention and impact. And that's a tragedy. And that's the case with all the 8 below the line styles when we're talking about the heart styles model. They don't work, but above the line, they do work. So intention, impression, and impact, they stack up. So the heart intention of relating is, I want to relate to you. I want to build a relationship. The impression is, you've been relating. We've been asking about each other's kids. I've been getting to know you. The impact is, we've built a relationship. So all the above the line styles, they work. The impact matches the intention. But below the line, none of them really work. Maybe they work for like 2 seconds and then they just don't work.
But that was wonderful to hear you explain that so clearly. And if anybody's listening who's felt a little triggered by that, especially if you were perhaps a child of a sarcastic parent, or you're perhaps in a relationship with anybody that says, I was only joking, there's a clue. Now, we're not going to go into full-blown narcissist system conversations now, but it is very damaging and it's very hard to tolerate. And of course, then we've got the flip side where people say, well, you've got rejection sensitivity or you're overly sensitive. It's very complex, Dave, but Heart Stars is a tool that can really help get into that quite quickly with a great deal of clarity in a framework that I just think is phenomenal. Dave, I wanted to ask you about the power of 360, which is how Heart Styles can also be used, because I've seen great progress with my own clients where they've had a 360 experience with friends and family. And it's been incredibly helpful for their sense of self to hear what people say about them, because it's often not aligned at all with what they say about themselves, which I find, especially if we're working with a client who has very negative self-talk or who is highly successful because they really do beast themselves. Can you talk a little bit about how the 360 works in a Heart Style setting?
So yeah, the 360 works in a number of ways. So if you're doing a self score, which is not 360, it's like 180. You fill in the indicator. I'm not sure how many questions it is off the top of my head. Let's say it's 100 questions, academically validated, statistically accurate questions that actually measure what it's trying to measure. And you fill it in for yourself 2 times. So the first is kind of your benchmark, and then you have what's your self score. So you fill it in 2 times. How would you ideally like to be behaving? What's the ideal Dave? And then what is Dave right now at this moment in time? That gives you 2 data sets. And then you can invite others to fill it in on your behalf, answer the same survey. And that can be 3 people, 6 people, 9, up to 15 people that then feedback on your behavior. And then what you get is you get a lot of data to work through. And the process of doing that is going, first of all, what does this say? And you get it in graph form, which bars are high, which bars are low, where are my growth opportunities, where are my strengths? And you also get it in written form, the stop, start, continue content, which people actually write, which can often shine a light on the way that you've scored what you've scored. And then it can be helpful in identifying strengths, which you didn't realize were strengths. As you say, sometimes, we are our own worst critic. And if we've got a lot of, that inner critic voice is quite loud, then sometimes we can be quite harsh in the way that we fill out the indicator about ourselves. And then you can you see others' perception of you and you think, okay, golly, others think I'm really strong in this area where I might have knocked myself down. So that can be quite helpful, but it can also break the blindness. Sometimes we can think we're strong in an area and we don't realize that actually we're not. And it can and it can break the blindness of that. So for me, one example would be when I asked my friends and family to fill in a heart styles indicator with me, I'd graded myself really high on relating. So I thought, yeah, I'm really good at relating. That's one of my strong points. And the feedback came back and relating bar was really low. And I was
Wow.
like, what's going on here? And on reflection and having some conversations, what I realized was that I am actually quite a task focused person. I do get distracted quite easily. And my brother, when I called him, I said, look, I've just got these results through. Can you just talk to me about it? Because I'm struggling. Help me. And he said, look, Dave, I know that you love me. I really do. But often when you call me, you want something and you don't take the time to really check in with me and see how I'm doing. And often when we're talking face to face, you get distracted. And so I know that you love me, but actually your relating skills with me are probably not where you want them to be or where you think that. And I was like, whoa, that is helpful feedback. And the beauty of this tool is that you're not typed, you're not stuck in like, oh, therefore I'm going to be bad at relating. I've been working on that. And my brother's fed back to me, said, I know you've been working on it and I thank you for it because I've noticed that I now take the time. Hey, how are you doing? Let's have a chit chat before I get into, what I actually want to call about.
I love that.
So that's like, it can shine a light on some of the areas that we can work on, and we can work on all of the behaviors. Yeah. So that we can kind of show up as our best self more of the time, more intentionally.
Well, and thank you for sharing that, being very honest. And I'm delighted that you've said that that's happened because I've recently worked with a CEO of a very large investment fund and 360 was very revealing. And when guided gently, the feedback is actually changed his entire approach to the way he deals with his team. And you've seen a massive culture shift because he wasn't aware that and again, it was around relating, how you relate what people think you're doing and what you actually think you're doing are sometimes two separate things.
Yeah.
And as soon as they saw, these people are smart. They're clever, they're quick. As soon as they see it, they go, oh, what do I need to do to change that? We just need to do a bit more of this. Oh, yeah, fine, I can do that. There's no criticism in it. It's just a behavior style that we can, if we're conscious, if we're in the conscious space, we can measure it and then we can manage it. There's a million things I could talk to you about. I think we might have to do a second podcast because otherwise we'll never get to the end of it. I mean, I could go back over about how powerful the metaphor work is, how it gives meaning, how storytelling is so important, because this is a lost art, I feel, in the workplace at times. And it's certainly a lost art in some of the personal development space. And people are really looking to explore themselves. And I have a number of clients who use medicine. They're in that space where they want to go and find themselves, or I don't know what they're looking for. I hope they're meeting with God. But there are other ways that don't require illegal things in your country, depending on where you live. But people do want to know. People are hungry. They're searching. They're ready to find out more about who they really are and why they're here. And here are two ways that you've described, or three ways. If you talk about the outdoors, Heart Styles as being an incredible tool that's been, as you said, academically validated and statistically.
I'm not sure what the word that comes after statistic is. Yeah, I mean, I know that there's a team from, I haven't looked at this for years now, so I'm not sharp on it, but I think it was I can't remember which one, one of the universities in Canada, one of the leading psychometric universities, have a team of statisticians which validate any psychometric instruments. And there's a set process that you go using clever people and statistics and taking 1,000 questions, which is what it started with, slowly but surely down to let's say the 100 or so that you get today. And you need to have a certain splits of population and a certain volume of people filling in the indicator to get it to a point where it's a statistically trustworthy instrument. But that side of things is kind of outside of my expertise.
But it's amazing. It's amazing stuff, isn't it? And I just think, for people that are listening who are running large organizations with significant investment in people, and people who are listening who are significantly investing in themselves, which I hope everybody is, because it's so important that we take the time really to discover more about who we are. We don't need to change. We just need to be aware, and then everything happens for us. If they want to speak to you more about this, Dave, how can they get hold of you, and where's the best place to find you?
So you can get hold of me at Dave at uplift-consulting.co.uk. My LinkedIn details are probably on this call. Our website is uplift-consulting.com.
Amazing. And I know that you also work globally. So for anybody who's listening, I think we hit 26 countries with one download recently. I don't know where all these people.
Fantastic! That's amazing.
I was looking at the map on the stats chart. thinking, "What? Who's listening to me in Indonesia?" But I was very excited about it. I don't know who they were.
Yeah, so
Probably
we can run global programs, so we can work virtually. We can travel. I was in Canada running a Heart Styles conference for 90 head teachers over the summer. So we're happy to travel, happy to work virtually. You can work on a one-to-one basis or a team basis. You can aggregate the Heart Styles results across a team, so you get team data. And then you can also work wider. You can aggregate the results across a department, do cascades down from a C-suite level down to all staff development. And the process is often MAC, so measure using the indicator. So you've actually got data to work with. Activate, you're on a program where you get everyone on the same page. Everyone feels safe and secure to process all of this feedback and to make commitments to take a step forward. And then cultivate coaching support to actually move forwards together. So yeah, different ways of working.
So just to remind you, highly experiential learning has far more impact, much higher returns, and ultimately creates better performance. We haven't even talked about heart rate variability, Dave, but I reckon
No, we
on the
haven't.
indicators, anybody who's got more above the line behaviors will have a higher heart rate variability showing in their Whoop, Garmin, or Aura Ring. So let's have a conversation about that next time. Until we meet again, Dave.
Well, I'll be learning from you on that.
Yes, but I do think we should have that conversation because the two, the energetic principles, and we talked about human energy, human flourishing, and the human energy crisis in a session earlier today, is absolutely essential. We have got to keep our eye on the ball here because people that don't, your organizations will fail, you will be out of business, your people will be burnt out, and it won't be a fun place to be living. So until next time, on that cheerful note, Dave, thank you so much and take care.
Thank you.